Have you ever wondered why certain women, without raising their voice or lifting a finger, can cut through the pride of a man as though their presence were a blade against his skin? It is not brute force, not manipulation, not even overt seduction. It is something deeper, something ancient, unspoken, and endlessly haunting. Carl Jung would say it is the anima, the feminine spirit dwelling in the shadows of the male psyche, awakened by a woman who knows how to embody her silent power. When a man's ego encounters such a force, he does not simply see a woman, he sees the mirror of his own incompleteness. His confidence trembles because the feminine secret is not about what she gives him, but about what she refuses to give. Most women are trained to please, to soften, to accommodate, but the woman who understands these hidden laws of psychology moves differently. She does not soothe his insecurities, she lets them burn until they consume themselves. And in that burning, his armor cracks, revealing the vulnerable child hidden inside the proud exterior. You may have noticed this yourself. A man can stand tall before the world, commanding respect from colleagues, feared by rivals, even admired by strangers. But in the silent gaze of a woman who sees through him, he is disarmed. Her silence feels heavier than his words, her absence louder than his presence. This is the paradox Jung spoke of when he described the anima. The feminine does not overpower by attacking, but by reflecting back to the man the truth he is desperate to avoid. The first cut to a man's ego often comes in the form of mystery. When she refuses to explain herself, when she doesn't bend to his demand for certainty, he is thrown into chaos. The male psyche craves conquest. It thrives on clarity, victory or defeat, yes or no, mine or not mine. But the feminine thrives in the in-between, in the liminal space where things are not named, where they are felt. And when a woman embodies this mystery, he cannot control the narrative. His imagination fills the silence, and his imagination is far more dangerous than her words. A second cut appears when she does not need him, not in a shallow performance of independence, but in the quiet confidence of one who is whole within herself. A woman who knows her value without validation becomes untouchable. Men feel it instantly, the difference between the woman who clings to his attention and the one who does not even measure her worth by his presence. Jung reminds us that the ego fears dissolution, and nothing dissolves the ego faster than realizing it is not central to another's existence. That realization is both intoxicating and unbearable for him. You may think, but won't men run from such a woman? Some will. The weaker ones will resent her for the wound she leaves upon their pride. But others, those who are strong enough to endure the confrontation with their shadow, will be drawn in deeper. They will chase, not out of conquest, but out of compulsion. For the male psyche, the woman who stands as a mirror to his inadequacy becomes unforgettable. She is not merely a lover or a companion. She becomes the symbol of everything he has yet to integrate. Consider the silence after a conflict. When a man expects tears, accusations, or begging, but is instead met with a calm withdrawal, his ego trembles. It is easier for him to fight against noise than to endure the void of indifference. Silence from a woman is not passive. It is active. It is confrontational without words. In that silence, his projections collapse, his imagined dominance falters. He is left alone with his thoughts, and in that lonely mirror, he sees what he has spent years hiding from himself. This is why Jung insisted that relationships are crucibles for individuation. The feminine archetype does not simply please or nurture, it exposes. And exposure is painful. Yet, paradoxically, it is also what makes a man grow. The woman who pierces his ego is not merely cruel. She is an agent of transformation. She pushes him toward the shadow, toward the confrontation with the parts of himself he would rather bury. And so, the dance continues. A man both resents and craves the woman who holds these secrets. He fears her because she dismantles the persona he shows the world. He desires her because, in her presence, he senses the possibility of becoming whole. His ego resists, but his soul remembers. And she, if she is wise, understands that her power does not lie in chasing, explaining, or convincing. Her power lies in knowing that she is the mirror he cannot escape. The more she embodies silence, detachment, and self-possession, the more his psyche bends toward her. He may call it attraction, obsession, or even love. But beneath those words lies the truth. He is drawn not just to her body or her beauty, but to the mystery of what she awakens within him, the unhealed, the unfinished, the unlived. And that, more than anything, pierces his ego like a blade. The wound to a man's ego does not bleed outward. It bleeds inward, in silence, in restless nights where his thoughts circle endlessly around the woman he cannot master. What he calls pride is, in fact, the fragile scaffolding of an identity built upon conquest and recognition. When a woman cuts through that facade, she exposes the hollowness beneath, and few things terrify the masculine ego more than being seen without its armor. Jung called this encounter with the shadow, the moment when a man can no longer deny the parts of himself he has hidden away. And it is often a woman, embodying her quiet, enigmatic strength, who forces this confrontation. You may notice how a man grows uneasy when his gestures of dominance fail to impress. He may raise his voice, flaunt his achievements, even attempt to provoke jealousy. But the woman who sees these as nothing more than masks remains unmoved. Her detachment reveals his desperation. Her refusal to feed his ego exposes how much he depends on others to affirm him. This is the first great humiliation, and also the first great possibility for transformation. In the Stoic words of Seneca, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. So too does the man realize that much of his life has been wasted performing for admiration instead of cultivating depth. Yet there is something else at play, something darker. The feminine energy that slices through a man's pride does not simply leave him weaker. It awakens in him a hunger. He begins to chase what he cannot possess. The woman becomes an enigma he longs to solve, a riddle that haunts his waking and sleeping hours. Jung might say that the anima has been projected onto her. She becomes, in his mind, both angel and destroyer, muse and tormentor. But the truth is simpler. She embodies the parts of himself he cannot yet claim, and so he worships and resents her in equal measure. For you, the woman listening, there is danger here. Power without awareness can collapse into cruelty. To cut a man's ego is not the same as to destroy him. The feminine that awakens without compassion becomes a weapon of chaos, and chaos destroys indiscriminately. The deeper secret is that her strength lies not in wounding for the sake of wounding, but in refusing to participate in illusions. She does not play small to soothe him, nor does she strike blindly to see him fall. She simply remains aligned with her own worth, and that alignment itself becomes unbearable to his ego. Observe how men often return again and again to the woman who wounded their pride. They may hate her, curse her, even claim indifference, yet their actions betray them. This is because the cut she left is not external. It is psychological. He cannot undo the memory of her silence, the echo of her absence, the way she walked away without flinching. Every other woman who seeks to flatter him feels, by contrast, less alive, less magnetic. It is the wound itself that keeps her alive in his memory, long after she is gone. This paradox is ancient. In myth, the hero does not find his power in the adoring maiden who worships him. He finds it in the goddess who tests him, who brings him to his knees, who denies him until he learns humility. Psyche must endure trials before she is reunited with Eros. Odysseus must resist the sirens whose song calls to his deepest longing. The feminine archetype has always been both gatekeeper and guide, both wound and balm. And when she pierces a man's ego, she places him at the threshold of transformation. Whether he crosses that threshold depends on his courage. But what of the woman herself? To embody such power requires detachment. She cannot fear his anger, nor can she cling to his approval. The moment she bends to soothe him, the blade dulls. The moment she explains herself, the mystery dissolves. Her strength is in holding her silence, in allowing his discomfort to reveal itself without interference. This is not easy, for every instinct may urge her to soften, to reassure, to prove her love. Yet, Jung reminds us, individuation requires tension. Without the tension of opposites, no growth occurs. By resisting the temptation to rescue his ego, she allows the alchemy of transformation to begin. In those moments, the man is faced with a choice. He can retreat into defensiveness, rejecting the lesson and vilifying the woman as cold, cruel, or manipulative. Or he can descend into the shadow, facing the parts of himself that tremble before her indifference. The stronger he clings to pride, the more the wound festers. But if he surrenders, If he allows himself to be broken open, then what felt like humiliation becomes liberation. And so the feminine secret cuts two ways. To the man, it feels like torment. To the woman, it feels like release. She is free because she does not need his validation. He is bound because he cannot yet imagine freedom without it. Yet beneath the struggle lies the deeper truth. The blade of the feminine does not kill, it carves. It removes the false from the real, the performance from the essence. And when wielded with wisdom, it becomes not a weapon, but a key. The man who has been pierced by the feminine does not forget, even if he surrounds himself with distractions, even if he throws himself into new conquests, even if he buries himself in noise. There will come quiet nights when he remembers her, the one who did not bend. He will replay her silence, her gaze, her refusal to feed his pride. These memories are not simply nostalgic. They are psychic imprints, carved into him by forces older than desire. Jung would say that he has encountered the numinous, that sudden recognition of something greater than himself, and once a man has tasted such a presence, he can never return unchanged. The wound becomes a mirror. It shows him what he has feared most, that his power was fragile, his authority conditional, his identity a mask. Many men collapse at this revelation, running back into the safety of illusions. They seek women who flatter them, who soften their edges, who play along with the performance. But the truly awakened man cannot unsee what he has seen. He knows, even as he resists it, that the feminine mystery holds the key to his own integration. You have seen this dynamic. A man might claim he is in control, that he has moved on, that he is unaffected. Yet he watches, he waits, he lingers on the edges of her life. Why? Because her detachment unsettled him. She did not crumble in his absence, nor beg for his return. She revealed by her very being that he was not the axis of her world. And in that revelation, his ego cracked. But the feminine does not act to punish. Her power is not rooted in vengeance, it is rooted in authenticity. When a woman refuses to play small, when she stands in her wholeness, she becomes both sanctuary and storm. Her presence teaches a man something he cannot learn from victory: humility. And humility is not weakness, it is the doorway to wisdom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In the same way, a man confronted by such a woman must face the truth that his power is internal, not external. Yet, for the woman, this is where the greatest temptation lies. It is easy to wield this power recklessly, to intoxicate herself with the knowledge that she can undo a man's pride with a glance, a silence, or a refusal. But this is the shadow of the feminine, to destroy without purpose, to cut for the thrill of it. True power requires discipline. The blade is sharp, but wisdom decides where it falls. A woman aligned with her essence knows that her role is not to rescue his ego, nor to annihilate it. Her role is to embody truth, and truth itself will decide his fate. Some men will interpret her silence as cruelty. They will curse her detachment, calling it coldness or indifference. But this is projection. What they truly hate is the reflection she offered them, the glimpse of their own inadequacy. Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. A man's resentment toward such a woman is, in reality, resentment toward the part of himself he has not claimed. He does not hate her silence. He hates that her silence revealed his dependence on noise. The tragedy is that many will never face this truth. They will run from one distraction to another, searching for validation in new women, new achievements, new conquests. But the deeper the chase, the further they stray from themselves. And always in the background, the memory of her remains, not as a woman, but as a symbol, an archetype, the wound that never healed because it was never meant to. And for the woman, she moves forward untouched. She is not defined by his obsession, nor by his resentment. She knows that his struggle is his own, that her role was never to complete him, but to remind him of his incompleteness. Her silence is not a weapon, but a boundary. Her detachment is not cruelty, but clarity. She does not need to explain, justify, or prove. She simply is, and in that being, she becomes unforgettable. There is, however, a deeper paradox here. For while she does not seek to harm him, her power is undeniable. Her presence challenges the very core of his identity, and in this tension lies the eternal dance of masculine and feminine, one seeking control, the other embodying mystery, one demanding certainty, the other dwelling in silence. It is not a battle to be won, but a mirror to be faced. And the man who dares to face it may discover that the wound to his ego was, in truth, the beginning of his soul's awakening. In the hidden chambers of the psyche, a man wrestles with what she awakened in him. He cannot put it into words, for the language of the ego is too crude, too linear to capture the experience. He only knows that her absence has weight, her silence has texture, and her indifference cuts deeper than any insult ever could. For Jung, this is the voice of the unconscious calling him toward an individuation, toward the painful process of becoming whole. But to the man trapped in ego, it feels like torment, like being haunted by a ghost he cannot name. And this haunting grows precisely because she did not give him closure. Closure is the balm of the ego. It explains, it rationalizes, it soothes. But she gave him none of it. She let the wound remain open, festering until he could no longer escape it. In the emptiness she left, his imagination expanded, filling the void with longing, anger, and obsession. What he feels for her is not merely attraction, it is projection. She has become the canvas for everything he has yet to accept within himself. This is where the feminine secret becomes dangerous. A woman who understands her effect may be tempted to wield it as a weapon. But the deeper wisdom is to understand that the power lies not in domination, but in detachment. To provoke obsession is easy, to embody freedom is rare. The woman who walks away without needing to be understood, without performing her independence, radiates a sovereignty that no man can forget. She becomes, in his mind, not just a lover, but a symbol of something eternal, something beyond reach. Think of how men speak of the one who got away. Their voices soften, their eyes turn inward, as though they are confessing to a secret failure. This confession is not about the loss of affection, but about the wound to pride. To have been abandoned by a woman who needed nothing from him is to face the truth that his ego was never the center of the universe. He cannot repair this by conquering another, for conquest only repeats the cycle. The true repair lies in surrender, in facing the shadow she revealed. Yet few men have the courage to descend that far. For the woman, the challenge is equally profound. She must resist the urge to shrink herself, to soften the cut of her presence so that men feel more comfortable. Society teaches women to make themselves palatable, to reassure, to apologize for their power. But the archetypal feminine does not apologize. She is ocean and fire, creation and destruction. She does not exist to soothe the fragile identities of men. She exists to embody truth, and truth is rarely gentle. This does not mean cruelty. Compassion is not the opposite of power, it is its completion. The woman who wields her silence with cruelty becomes destructive. But the woman who wields it with clarity becomes transformative. She does not explain, she does not justify, but neither does she gloat. She simply allows the man to meet himself in the mirror she provides. If he hates what he sees, that is his journey. If he grows from it, that too is his journey. Either way, she remains free. The Stoics understood this freedom. Epictetus taught that no man can truly harm you unless you grant him power over your mind. Likewise, no woman loses her power unless she hands it away in exchange for his approval. The moment she recognizes that his validation is irrelevant to her worth, she is untouchable. And in that untouchability lies the sharpness that slices through his ego. He may call her cold, distant, or impossible, but beneath the insults lies awe. He knows that she is different from the rest, that her presence awakens something he cannot unsee. And though his pride resists, his soul yearns. For deep in the male unconscious is the memory of the eternal feminine, the anima that guides him toward wholeness. Every encounter with a woman who embodies her essence is, for him, an initiation. Painful, yes, but also sacred. The paradox then is this. Her very refusal becomes his desire, her silence becomes his obsession, her detachment becomes his hunger. And while he struggles with this torment, she remains still, like a flame that does not chase the moth, but burns steadily in its place. The moth circles, drawn to its own destruction, yet unable to turn away. This is not manipulation. It is archetypal gravity. The feminine does not pursue, it attracts. She does not fight for recognition. She becomes unforgettable by being unshakably herself. And so the dance continues, his ego unraveling, her presence sharpening, both drawn into the alchemy of transformation. It is a dangerous alchemy, but also a necessary one. For without the blade of the feminine, the masculine remains trapped in illusion, untested, untransformed, and without the testing, he will never know the freedom that comes from humility. The man's struggle deepens the longer he resists. Pride tells him that to submit is weakness, that to admit his wound is to lose. Yet what he calls weakness is, in truth, the beginning of wisdom. Jung would remind us that the ego cannot be destroyed by force. It dissolves only when confronted with something greater than itself. And often that something greater arrives in the form of a woman who embodies mystery, silence, and self-possession. She is not larger than him in physical power, but she is vast in presence. Her refusal to orbit around his needs exposes how small his world truly is. You may notice how a man behaves when he senses he is losing control. He may cling harder, demanding explanations, seeking reassurance, trying to trap her with questions. But every word she withholds becomes another blade. Every moment of calm detachment feels to him like abandonment. What he does not realize is that the wound she inflicts is not hers, it is his own. She has not created his fear of insignificance, she has merely revealed it. And revelation, once seen, cannot be unseen. This is the essence of shadow work. The shadow is not evil, it is merely unseen. When she refuses to soften his illusions, she drags the shadow into light. For him, this feels like betrayal. He wanted devotion, not confrontation. But in truth, she has given him the most intimate gift, the chance to face himself without disguise. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." So it is here. The man who avoids the woman who pierces him avoids not her, but himself. Yet the feminine must tread carefully. Her power is intoxicating, but it is not meant for domination. The archetypal feminine is not conqueror, but mirror. When she reflects his emptiness, she does not gloat. When she reflects his longing, she does not manipulate. Her strength lies in her stillness, in her refusal to collapse into his narrative. For the moment she defines herself through his reaction, she loses the very essence that made her untouchable. And this is why some men never recover from such a woman. Not because she destroyed them, but because she revealed them. Other women may flatter, seduce, nurture, but none can undo the raw honesty of the one who simply refused to bow. She becomes the ghost that follows him into every relationship, the memory that no new love can erase. Even when he thinks he has forgotten, her silence lives within him like an unhealed scar. This scar is not a curse. It is a summons. It calls him toward depth, toward humility, toward the painful beauty of self-knowledge. If he answers the call, the wound becomes a teacher. If he rejects it, the wound becomes a prison. Many men choose the prison, hiding behind arrogance or distraction, but a few, rare, disciplined, courageous, allow themselves to be broken open, and in that breaking they discover a strength far beyond the ego's performance. For the woman, this truth is liberating. She does not need to force transformation. She does not need to control his journey. Her role is only to embody herself fully, to stand in her sovereignty without apology. Whether he crumbles or grows is not her burden. Her detachment is not cruelty, it is wisdom. She knows that each man must decide whether to face his shadow or flee from it, and so she remains still, like a mountain unmoved by the storm. There is something profoundly erotic in this dynamic, not in the shallow sense of lust, but in the archetypal sense of eros, the magnetic pull of the soul toward what it lacks. He is drawn to her not because she flatters him, but because she denies him. She refuses to complete him, and in that refusal, she awakens his longing for wholeness. This is why men call such women unforgettable. It is not her beauty alone, nor her words, nor her actions. It is the space she created, the space in which he met himself. Marcus Aurelius warned, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." To the man, her silence feels like an impediment. Yet, if he dares to confront it, he discovers that the silence itself was the path. And to the woman, this is the secret. She does not need to move mountains. She needs only to remain rooted, and the mountains will move themselves. Thus, the ego trembles, the shadow awakens, and the dance of attraction deepens. What began as desire becomes obsession. What began as pride becomes surrender. And yet, through it all, she remains whole, untouched by his storms, sovereign in her silence. For her power was never in what she gave him, but in what she refused to give. And that refusal is sharper than any blade. There is a moment, quiet and imperceptible, when the man realizes that all his striving, all his attempts to dominate, persuade, or impress have failed. He has stood before her with all the trophies of his ego, status, wealth, wit, attention, and none of them moved her. In that moment, he feels something rare, insignificance. For the male ego, this is unbearable. He has built his identity upon being the center of gravity, the one around whom others orbit. Yet here stands a woman who does not orbit at all. She shines with her own light, and in her radiance, his borrowed glow fades. This confrontation is not merely emotional, it is existential. Jung reminds us that the anima, the feminine figure within a man's unconscious, represents his pathway to the soul. When she pierces his pride, she does not simply wound him. She awakens him to the truth that he is incomplete. Her silence echoes louder than his victories. Her distance teaches him more than her devotion ever could. She does not lecture, yet he learns. He learns that the essence of power is not in being worshipped, but in being real. The ego resists this lesson. It seeks escape through anger, through dismissal, through distraction. He may call her difficult, unattainable, even heartless. But his words betray his fear. For beneath the accusations lies the secret knowledge that he has been changed. He has glimpsed his own vulnerability, and he cannot erase what he has seen. He may attempt to cover it with bravado, but the wound remains. And like all true wounds, it demands healing. For the woman, this is the moment of greatest clarity. She sees that her worth was never contingent upon his recognition. She feels, perhaps for the first time, the gravity of her own presence. It is not what she does that disarms him. It is what she refuses to do. She refuses to chase, refuses to explain, refuses to diminish herself to soothe his pride. And in this refusal, she becomes an archetype, a figure larger than herself. She embodies the eternal feminine, unyielding, radiant, untouchable. But here lies the paradox. The very qualities that wound his ego also draw him deeper. He cannot conquer her, yet he cannot release her. She is both threat and salvation, mirror and mystery. In Jungian terms, she becomes a projection of his anima, his inner feminine. He does not merely desire her, he desires what she represents within himself. The wholeness he has never claimed, the softness he has never allowed, the silence he has never embraced. This is why obsession takes root. Obsession is not born from satisfaction, it is born from lack. He obsesses over her because she did not complete the story in his mind. She left the sentence unfinished, the door half open, and in that unfinished space, his imagination burns. He cannot rest, because her silence denies him closure. He cannot forget, because her absence demands interpretation. She has become not just a woman, but a riddle, and riddles are irresistible to the masculine mind. Yet the riddle cannot be solved by conquering her. It can only be solved by conquering himself. This is the secret most men never learn. They think they must win her back, prove their worth, demand her attention. But the blade she wielded was never aimed at his body or his heart. It was aimed at his illusion. The only way forward is to abandon the illusion entirely, and this is the hardest task of all. The woman, meanwhile, continues on her path. She does not wait for his transformation, nor does she hinge her life upon whether he grows. She walks steadily, carrying her mystery like a crown. She does not need to punish him. His own ego does that well enough. She does not need to prove herself. Her very existence is proof of a deeper law. The feminine does not pursue. It attracts. It does not conquer. It reveals. For some men, this revelation will remain a torment. For others, it will become a blessing. Those who choose to face their shadow will return stronger, humbler, more whole. Those who refuse will remain haunted, chasing echoes of a woman who has long since moved beyond them. But regardless of his path, her essence remains unchanged. She is free because she has never tied her worth to his recognition. She is powerful because she has nothing to lose. And this is the ultimate paradox. The woman who pierces his ego liberates herself in the same act. By refusing to shrink, she claims her sovereignty. By refusing to soothe, she protects her essence. By refusing to explain, she keeps her mystery intact. She is not cruel, she is clear. And clarity, when faced with ego, always cuts. The man may spend years circling this memory, interpreting it, resisting it, longing for it. But the woman has already stepped into another horizon, untouched, radiant, whole. For her, the blade was never about him. It was always about her freedom. The woman who knows this truth does not beg. She does not chase. She chooses.